This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Yuan Gohan's expression grew more and more solemn. Although Mo Huayuan had fallen behind by quite a bit, with his 8th rank soul power, as long as he didn't make any more mistakes, there was still hope for him to turn the tide. But to Yuan Gohan's dismay, the rhythm of the competition seemed to be completely under Yunxiao's control. Everything was centered around him, and Mo Huayuan seemed to have become a foil. This phenomenon was very easy to appear in the situation where there was a huge difference in strength between two people. In both cases, the stronger one would lead the competition, but now it was the complete opposite. The condensing process gradually came to an end, and the two of them were about to enter the process of consolidating equipment. Although Mo Huayuan made a lot of mistakes along the way, he was still faster than Yunxiao. From the beginning until now, I've lost in terms of purification and condensation. You're strong, really strong, so strong that I don't know what to do. When he spoke, Jin Xian, Wu Qin, and Xiao Xuanzi were all shocked. Their brains short-circuited and they lost their ability to think. What did Master Mo say? Say that he had lost? Yunxiao was so powerful that he was at a loss. All three of them had a dull expression, and their eyes seemed to be frozen, unable to move. I can say without exaggeration that you're absolutely the #1 person in the art of Tao among the young people in the world of martial arts. Mo Huayuan was not stingy with his praise. His face darkened as he said, "If you hadn't warned me in the beginning and allowed me to continue panicking, you would have really won this competition. But, I have to thank you for pulling me back from my state of distraction in time. So, the result is that you lost, but I won't take your life." Oh? Could it be that you still have some final consolidating equipment technique? Yunxiao raised an eyebrow in disapproval. They were about to enter the final battle. As there was no thunder tribulation among the alchemy products below the 5th tier, there were few major changes. The quality of his pill was slightly higher than Mo Huayuan's, so as long as he didn't make any mistakes, he would win. With his personality and Tao of art, he would never make any mistakes. That's right, there aren't many methods below the 5th tier that can increase one's consolidating equipment. The lightning talisman is one of them, and the powerful flame is another. Even though you have a level 10 divine fire, I've long since seen that your soul power is insufficient, and it's impossible for you to use it again at the end. As for the lightning talisman, it's something only children would use. When I left the holy region, my master taught me something. Mo Huayuan's eyes shone with great confidence. At this moment, he looked at Yunxiao as if he had won, and his confidence that an 8th tier alchemist should have was restored. Yunxiao's heart sank. That kind of confidence was definitely not an act, and he must have a trump card. He immediately asked with a voice transmission, "Old Yuan, what did you teach him? Hurry up and tell me, if I lose, you'll be finished too." Yuan Gohan's eyes flashed with joy as he laughed. Could it be that he has really mastered it? Not bad, you're worthy of being my disciple. Yunxiao's face flickered slightly. Since even Yuan Gohan had said the same thing, it seemed that there was indeed something going on. He could not help but become vigilant. Mo Huayuan raised his hand and pinched 2 fingers together. Instantly, a golden light shot out from his palm and gradually condensed into a dazzling golden character in the air. His 2 fingers changed and gathered together again. Another light rose and another character appeared, shining with a gentle light. It was the golden tadpole-like characters of ancient times. And apart from Yuan Gohan, the only 2 left, as well as the 2 he had mastered the most, were the incantation gestures for core condensation. Mo Huayuan mumbled a few incomprehensible words, and his hands began to move. 2 ancient scriptures were sent directly into the raw material, and the surging pill qi began to rise. The quality gradually solidified, and the pill fragrance began to spread. Brat, you never would have thought that you would lose. Yuan Gohan couldn't help but burst into laughter. Although Yunxiao had gained the upper hand all the way, the result was still his disciple's victory. As a master, he was naturally happy. Yunxiao also had a bad feeling. When the two golden tadpole-like characters appeared, he had already expected that something was wrong. Now that the situation had reversed, his eyes darkened and he retracted his thoughts. The elusive waves technique in his hand continued to speed up, creating layers of illusions. "It's no use," Yuan Gaohan said happily. "The elusive waves technique is powerful, but it's only created by Gu Feiyang, a 9th-tier alchemist. What my disciple is using is the profound meaning of the divine realm. There might be a glimmer of hope if you can perform it exactly the same as Gu Feiyang, but is it possible for you to do it?" Without saying a word, Yunxiao's soul form directly appeared in the divine realm tablet and began to display the great expansion divine technique. In response, his body began to glow with the light of ancient scriptures. Although no words appeared in the air, an indescribable meaning spread out, making him look extremely sacred at this moment. "You coward." Both Yuan Gaohan and Mo Huayuan were taken aback. Mo Huayuan did not understand why the elusive waves technique could produce such an effect, but Yuan Gaohan knew that it was the overlapping effect of the two different techniques performed at the same time. Yunxiao's soul power was nearly exhausted, so it was simply difficult for him to support it by separating a wisp of it. But what made Yuan Gaohan's face gradually change was that Yunxiao's soul power was not immediately exhausted at this moment, or it was slowly accumulating, storing, and preparing for the final blow. "What's going on? What's this technique?" Yuan Gaohan's heart was filled with doubt. "You really won? I've never lost in my life, not to you or anyone else." Yunxiao's expression froze, and his eyes shone like stars. Every movement of his hands was covered with a golden light that looked like ancient scriptures. The whole elusive waves technique was executed in a divine manner, making the people around him feel that they were both very far and very close, as if they were no longer in this space and gradually lost their sense of existence. Mo Huayuan's face paled in horror when he saw Yunxiao's technique. He had seen the elusive waves heavenly sutra technique many times, but he had never heard of anyone who could use it to this extent. Yuan Gaohan's face was dull, and the shock on his face suddenly slowly dissipated. His eyes burst with light, as if he had understood something. He felt that Yunxiao's words were very familiar, and they left a deep impression on him, but he could not remember them for a moment. Just as the elusive waves heaven scroll technique was being executed in a marvelous manner, the memory in his mind was finally opened. A few decades ago, there was a major event that shocked the world. In the illusory realm of stars and moon, the most outstanding alchemy master in the past thousands of years, Ai, suddenly appeared among the demon race, and she led a large number of demon alchemists to provoke the Sea of Soul formation. The original Sea of Soul formation laughed at this and did not take it seriously at all. Seeing that the other party was also a 9th-tier alchemist, they sent out an alchemist who had just advanced to the 9th tier to deal with her. As a result, the 9th-tier alchemist was completely defeated in the battle, and he vomited blood and died on the spot. This immediately attracted the attention of the higher-ups of the Sea of Soul formation. After all, every 9th-tier alchemist was an irreplaceable wealth. The loss of one person for no reason infuriated the higher-ups of the Sea of Soul formation. Therefore, they planned to teach these arrogant demons a lesson. Therefore, the alchemist they sent next was an elder who was more than 200 years old and had studied the 9th tier and above for nearly 100 years. He was very famous, and his treatment in the headquarters of the Sea of Soul formation was only second to that of the president. However, the result was, not only had the alchemist been defeated, but they had also sent out more and more powerful beings. Even the vice president had failed miserably in the end. Within 7 days, he had defeated 5 people from the Sea of Soul formation, all of whom were famous great alchemists. This time, the whole world was shocked. Not only did the Sea of Soul formation lose face, but the overall honor of the human race was also damaged. For a moment, all the experts in the world were boiling. The human race had always regarded themselves as the legitimate overlord race of the heavenly martial arts realm. They had always looked down on the rest of the demon race and sea race. However, he didn't expect that no one would be able to accept the beast race's provocation this time. If the human race were to continue to lose in the 2 major fields of arts and martial arts, how could they still have any face to speak of? Even the sacred zone, which had always been at odds with the Sea of Soul formation, could no longer sit still and sent a large number of alchemists to help. At that time, the person leading the army was the Lord who was faintly known as the world's number one. He was also Yuan Gohan's teacher, and Yuan Gaohan, as his assistant, had also gone with him. Yuan Gaohan could still clearly remember that when he first came to the Sea of Soul formation, the atmosphere there was extremely heavy. No one, be it the high-level officials or the ordinary alchemists, could be seen smiling. They were all frowning and holding a grudge against the demon race. At that time, Lu Zongzi, the master of the Sea of Soul formation and the leader of all alchemists in the world, had immediately summoned all the alchemists above the 9th tier to discuss a solution after seeing Yuan Gohan's master. Everyone's consensus was that no one could take on the challenge except Lu Zongzi and Yuan Gohan's master. However, both Yuan Gohan's master and Lu Zongzi had extremely high status. Once they lost, it would undoubtedly be a heavy blow to the entire human race's art Dao, and the consequences would be unimaginable. The two of them were also hesitant, unable to make up their minds to accept the challenge. At this moment, a woman suddenly suggested. The woman was not an alchemist, but her status was also extremely respected. She was Lu Fian, the Red Lotus martial sovereign, one of the 10 titled martial sovereigns. The person who had proposed the idea at that time was also in the Sea of Soul formation, but he did not care about the provocation of the demon race, and he did not even attend such an important meeting. When Lu Fian suggested that person, the whole venue was in an uproar. More than half of the alchemists disagreed, and they were very suspicious of that person's ability. Yuan Gaohan had just advanced to the 9th tier alchemist at that time, and he was in the prime of his life, so he didn't take it seriously when he first heard all kinds of comments about this man. Yuan Gaohan himself was a genius, and coupled with his master who was publicly acknowledged as the number one alchemist in the world, he simply didn't put that person in his eyes. Moreover, how could such an unruly person have such high achievements in the art of divination? Some alchemists even threatened to leave the Sea of Soul formation, protesting that man's participation in the battle on behalf of the human race. The quarrel lasted the whole night. In the end, Lu Zongzi and Yuan Gohan's master agreed to let that person have a try. The reason was that this person must have extraordinary talent since he could create the 12 styles of flying flower and falling snow. However, if they were still defeated, only one of them would have to fight in the end. Lu Zongzi immediately sent people to find that person overnight. What made them want to vomit blood was that the person actually extorted Lu Zongzi and his master for a large number of supreme-grade medicinal pills and all kinds of refining materials, even a 10th-tier spirit herb, by taking advantage of the fact that his soul power had yet to recover after the last refining. Yuan Gohan's heart ached as he watched from the side, and he really wanted his guard to kill him and rob him of the treasure, but at the thought of that person's strength, he still held back. The two lords were also extremely depressed. Considering that this competition was related to the reputation of the human race, and that the race was more important, they endured it again and again. Who knew that on the second day of the competition, this fellow didn't even use a single pill before going up the stage? He didn't even drink a mouthful of water. Those two lords were so angry that they wanted to rush up and tear him apart. Fortunately, that person did not fail his mission. Yuan Gaohan came back to his senses, and a complicated look flashed in his eyes. As he looked at Yun Xiao, who had finally performed the final pill condensation, his thoughts returned to the arena where all the people had left. On that day, the Sea of Soul formation was filled with clouds and mist. Under the magical god tower that reached the clouds, a rainbow crossed the sky and landed on the other side of the clouds. The location of the competition was the largest cloud island, floating around the magic god tower. It was called Rainbow Clouds, Chasing the Moon. A few hours before the competition, all the clouds around Rainbow Cloud Chasing Moon had been packed with alchemists. Some of the more powerful ones were even hovering in the air, surrounded by martial supreme experts to protect them, showing their strength and status. Ai Hui sat cross-legged in the sky above the Rainbow Cloud Chasing Moon. Her eyes were closed, and she was wearing a brown brocade robe. Her long hair was like flowing water, and her face was as clear as the lake. She actually had the appearance of a young woman in her 20s, with a delicate and clear face. She calmly sat in the air and formed a strange demonic seal with one hand. It flickered in front of his chest and her left hand was gently placed on her dantian. She entered a state of calmness and waited. A ray of purple light surrounded her body and began to flow without any form. It was as if she had cultivated some kind of cultivation technique, which brought about a divine power phenomenon. The people from the Sea of Soul formation all showed a deep fear of that purple cloud. It was Ai Huey's cauldron weapon, the sky illuminating cloud. It could actually directly take physical form, moving with light and shadow. A great demon emerged from the clouds and coldly glanced at the ashen-faced humans. He sneered in disdain and said, "Which random fish are you sending out today?" He laughed contemptuously. "I heard that the human race's soul formation sees Master Lu Zongzi led the world. In the divine capital of the holy region, Lord Amaterasu was unparalleled. It turns out that he's actually Bayan. How embarrassing." His words immediately caused the anger in the clouds to rise sharply. Sparks of hatred condensed in the air, and the smell of gunpowder filled the air. All of them were so angry that they wished they could rush up to block the muzzle and blow up the bunker. Lu Zongzi and Tian Zhaozi looked at each other helplessly. They were under the greatest pressure, especially Lu Zongzi, who was the president of the Alchemist Association and the leader of all the alchemists in the world. He said to the person behind him, "You're up. Don't let too much pressure affect your performance. You can take the heaven fate pill I gave you yesterday, it will increase your chances of winning." Yuan Gaohan, who was standing behind Tian Zhaozi, turned his head slightly and saw the man walking out from Lu Zongzi's side. He was wearing a stone blue diamond robe and didn't pay attention to Lu Zongzi's words. Instead, he winked at a woman in red in the crowd and chuckled, "Sister Fian, I'm a little afraid of heights, can you help me?" At that time, Yuan Gohan's expression changed slightly, and many people were also angry. At this critical moment, he was still thinking about hitting on girls. Lu Fian was wearing a lotus flower embroidered red dress with a few fiery red lotus flowers carved on it. Her expression was indifferent, and no expression could be seen. Under everyone's gaze, Lu Fian raised her right hand and stroked her hair. She casually formed a lotus with her fingers and gently threw it forward. A red fire lotus flew out from her palm and transformed in the air. It floated in front of the person. Then, 1 became 2, 2 became 3, and it actually gave birth to a red lotus path. The gorgeous and bright red lotus fire spread out with the flowers, spreading from the person's feet to the colorful clouds chasing the moon. All the fiery red lotuses bloomed at this moment, and a strange beauty appeared in the sky. It was like a heavenly path, with red lanterns connected from head to tail. It was also like a lotus pond in the sunset, reflecting the figure of the man in the sky. The big demon's face changed as he looked at Lu Fian in shock. At this moment, Ai also opened its eyes and looked forward. It chuckled and said, "Who are you?" The man stood on a red lotus, and in the sky, the bright red reflected his long shadow, as if he was the only one left in the world. He opened his thin lips and said softly, "Gu Feiyang." Ai raised its eyebrows as if it was thinking about the name. The big demon's face turned cold and he said in fear, "You're Gu Feiyang, the martial sovereign vanquisher?" He suppressed the shock in his heart. Under the other party's temperament, he only felt that the martial intent in his heart was somewhat shaken. He hurriedly shouted, "This is an art competition, what are you doing here?" Gu Feiyang chuckled and stepped on the rainbow cloud-chasing moon in a few steps. He said, "The one competing is your master, what are you shouting for?" The sleeve of his right hand fluttered, and a gust of wind and cloud gathered. He waved his hand and slapped it out. The path of heaven that the flame lotus had opened up seemed to be swaying under the gathering of the wind and clouds. Lu Fian was finally moved. She waved her right hand gently and the lotus flower bloomed, turning into a rain of petals that sprinkled down like a blood-colored setting sun. The great demon instantly felt a huge pressure coming at him. He wanted to use his genuine chi to resist, but he was shocked to find that his little strength was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot or an ant trying to shake a tree under the wind and cloud palm. He collapsed in an instant. He didn't even have the time to let out a cry of surprise before he was slapped away without a trace. Gu Feiyang looked at AI Hui and chuckled, "You're so full of yourself. I really don't know how you barbarians can stand it. The flies are gone, we can start now." A hint of surprise appeared in AI Hui's eyes when she saw the big demon being sent flying in the sky. Her eyes flickered with a sharp light as she stared at Gu Feiyang and said, "Your martial arts cultivation is very powerful, but you're no match for me in the art of divination." Gu Feiyang crossed his arms in front of his chest and chuckled. "I admit that my mouth isn't as good as yours. You couldn't have been the one who won the first few matches with your mouth, right?" AI laughed as well. She descended from the sky and stepped on the colorful cloud. Her brown robe fluttered in the wind as she looked at Gu Feiyang. Gu Feiyang was slightly surprised. Just by standing there, the young woman in front of him gave him the feeling of a mountain, and he had a faint feeling of wanting to look up to him. He was greatly shocked. Although his art of Tao could not be said to be at the peak of the 9th rank, it was not far from the peak. Even in front of Lu Congzi and Tian Zhaozi, he had never felt such a sense of oppression. Could this person be a level 10 warlock god? His heart sank slightly. He had already begun to feel that something was amiss. No wonder those old fellows from earlier had been defeated one by one. Although you're not my match, I think this will be a very happy match. Let's start. You set the rules. Aida laughed generously. Gu Feiyang was not to be outdone in terms of aura. He smiled back and said, "Then let's make it simple. We'll just refine a random medicinal pill and compare the grades." AI nodded and said, "Very good. I'm afraid it's difficult to distinguish the quality of ordinary level 9 medicinal pills. Why don't we make it simple and refine the 2 elements pill? What do you think?" "Very good," Gu Feiyang said, suddenly moved. Lu Congzi immediately waved his hand, and someone quickly brought up a large amount of 9th tier materials. The yin and yang pill was the most precious treasure among the 9th tier alchemists, and ordinary 9th tier alchemists could not even try to refine it. It was named yin and yang, which condensed yin and yang qi and transformed the meaning of yin and yang into a pill, which was also very beneficial to martial emperor realm experts. AI's personality was very straightforward, and it didn't drag things out. After the materials were brought up, she directly picked them up, gently opened its mouth, and spat out a mouthful of flames. Judging from the heat and power, it was definitely a 9th grade flame without a doubt. While he was calcinating and purifying the raw materials, the purple light that had been revolving around his body gathered in front of him, gradually condensing into a purple cauldron that illuminated the sky and fell on the rainbow cloud-chasing moon. As the refining process gradually unfolded, Gu Feiyang's heart became unusually heavy. He had never felt such pressure from refining. He was getting less and less confident about winning. He was not the only one. All the alchemists around him were very accomplished, and they soon saw that Gu Feiyang was at a disadvantage in every move. With such accumulation, it was impossible for him to win. At this moment, many complaints rose up from all directions. Many of them looked at Lu Fian with malicious and uncertain eyes. For a moment, everyone was in a panic. Lu Congzi's faces were also extremely ugly, especially since Gu Feiyang had extorted so many elixirs from them, but none of them had been used. At this moment, Tian Zhaozi's pupils suddenly contracted, and his face was filled with rage. He lost his composure and shouted, "What is Gu Feiyang doing? Refine the yin and yang pill to level 8? What? Refine the yin and yang pill to level 8? Isn't this a 100% loss?" Everyone present was stunned. Their eyes widened in disbelief.